COVID-19 travel restrictions.
When I took bold action to issue a travel ban on China very early indeed, Joe Biden called it hysterical and xenophobic. And then I introduced a ban on Europe very early again.
The travel restrictions on flights from China that Trump put in place on February 2nd were not a ban. There were exceptions for U.S. citizens, permanent residents, and the immediate family members of both. And he did not impose the restrictions on flights from China very early indeed. 36 countries imposed travel restrictions before or by February 2nd. Similarly, the travel restrictions on flights from Europe were not a ban. The travel policy applied only to the entry of most foreign nationals who have been in certain European countries, and also did not apply to U.S. citizens and permanent residents and their immediate family members, according to the Department of Homeland Security. The travel restrictions on Europe also weren't very early. In fact, a CDC study found that those restrictions were implemented too late to mitigate the introduction of the virus. They were implemented on March 13th, but by March 15th, the CDC report says, community transmission was widespread in New York City. It is also a matter of dispute as to whether Biden described the travel restrictions on flights from China as xenophobic. At a campaign event, Biden did use the term xenophobia on the day the White House announced the travel restrictions, but he did not mention the travel restrictions in that speech. The Biden campaign says Biden was not talking about the travel ban, but rather Trump's long record of scapegoating others at a time when the virus was emerging from China. COVID-19 treatments.
We developed a wide array of effective treatments, including a powerful antibody treatment known as convalescent plasma. You saw that on Sunday night when we announced it, that will save thousands and thousands of lives.
In fact, there are no Food and Drug Administration approved drugs to treat COVID-19, although physicians can provide supportive care, and 2 drugs have shown benefits in randomized controlled trials in particular patients. An antiviral drug, remdesivir, was found to reduce the recovery time compared with a placebo in patients who required supplemental oxygen but were not ventilated. The steroid dexamethasone was shown in a UK trial to improve survival, but only in patients who were sick enough to need supplemental oxygen. Contrary to the president's claim, convalescent plasma has not yet been shown to be beneficial in a randomized controlled trial, although observational studies suggest it may reduce mortality. Economy not strongest ever.
Within 3 short years, we built the strongest economy in the history of the world.
By several measures, the U.S. economy has been better under other presidents before Trump. Economic growth. Trump's best year was a 3% increase in real inflation-adjusted gross domestic product in 2018, which fell just short of the 3.1% growth achieved as recently as 2015. Jobs. Total employment growth slowed down during Trump's first 3 years. During those years, nearly 6.6 million jobs were added, a more than respectable number, but nearly 8.1 million jobs had been added in the previous 3 years. Unemployment? The unemployment rate was already well below the historical norm when Trump took office, and continued dropping to the lowest rate in half a century, 3.5%, as recently as February. But it's been lower many times before. It was under 3% for 11 straight months ending in November 1953, for example. Biden's tax plan.
He has pledged a $4 trillion tax hike on almost all American families, which will totally collapse our rapidly improving economy.
Biden's plan does not call for any direct tax increases for anyone making less than $400,000. It calls for imposing a payroll tax on earnings over $400,000, restoring a top income tax rate of 39.6% for income above $400,000, and increasing the top corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. But independent tax analysts say Biden's plan to raise the top corporate tax rate will indirectly affect employees due to lower investment returns or lower wages over time. According to the Penn-Wharton budget model, which estimates the Biden tax plan would raise between $3.1 trillion and $3.7 trillion over 10 years. Middle-income earners would see their after-tax income decline by 0.4%, or $180 on average.
During their convention, Joe Biden and his supporters remained completely silent about the rioters and criminals spreading mayhem in Democrat-run cities. They never even mentioned it during their entire convention, never once mentioned. Now they're starting to mention it because their poll numbers are going down like a rock in water. It's too late, Joe.
It's not true that Biden condemned rioters only after the Democratic convention. Although he did not mention rioting in his convention speech, Biden repeatedly condemned violent protests prior to the convention. Trump appeared to be referring to a video Biden posted on Twitter on August 26th in response to the August 23rd shooting of Jacob Blake by police in Kenosha, Wisconsin. But that was not the first time Biden has spoken out against rioters. After the police killing of George Floyd on May 25th and the ensuing protests in cities around the country, Biden said in an interview on CNN on May 29th,
I said in the right to be, in fact, angry and frustrated, and more violence hurting more people isn't going to answer the question.
In remarks on racial economic equity on July 28th, Biden reiterated that message.
I said from the outset of the recent protests that there's no place for violence or destruction of property. Peaceful protesters should be protected, and arsonists and anarchists should be prosecuted. And local law enforcement can do that.